What if I was to tell you that you could have 100 times more peak experiences, reliable peak experiences than the average person? That you could do so with little, or in some cases, no money. And you could do it with anyone who wanted to share a peak experience. Would you be interested? The recipe is easy and in that sense is magical. Any two people can successfully create a peak experience. A group, 10, 12 people, right, with enough time and practice can come together as strangers and each person walk away with a peak experience with another member of the group. So the first thing to overcome is the somewhat odd belief that peak experiences just happen. You don't go out and create a peak experience, you just live your life, and if you're lucky, I don't know, maybe you have 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 peak experiences over the course of a lifetime, and they just happen. And certainly, many people have the good fortune of having 2 to 10 peak experiences over the course of their lives. But why not 100 peak experiences? Why not a peak experience anytime you want one? So first of all, let's demystify a peak experience. A peak experience, if we look at the bell curve of experience, right? A peak experience is one of the best experiences. And, right, why not have one of the best experiences you can have? And the other thing to just be clear is it doesn't take more time to have a peak experience than an unpleasant experience or a boring experience. People spend vast amounts of time every week watching television, and most of them, if you ask them, they don't remember much the following week, and they certainly don't list that as a peak experience. So people have plenty of time, and it doesn't take a lot of time to have a peak experience. It also doesn't take a lot of money, right? It's good to have $1,000 for a peak experience available, right? And to share with, if you put up $1,000 and somebody else puts up $1,000, that certainly opens up more possibilities, right? But, some of the most profound and, truly peak experiences in my life have been absolutely free. So it does not take money. The less money you have, the more imagination, the more attunement you must have, the more skill you must have, right? And you don't have to do it with a special someone, right? So the idea is, right, the special someone, you have a peak experience because they're special. No. In almost all cases, the peak experiences that I've had, the people became special because we created a peak experience. Right? They didn't start off as the most special person on the planet, and therefore a peak experience occurred. Rather, we created a peak experience, and the more successful and the more elegantly we created a peak experience, the more special they became, right? Whoever you share peak experiences with becomes biologically linked to the experience. And so because the experience is special, the person becomes special. Now, this is why in John Gottman's work, he points out that couples tend to come together and strengthen their relationship when they succeed in a challenging situation, meaning there's high stress, there's high adrenaline because there's a challenge. They come together to solve the problem, and if they solve it successfully, they get their relationship gets stronger, right? So because then you have feelings of, I like myself, I solved a problem, I'm proud of myself, I stood up to the situation, we did it together, I like that. And who did I do that with? I did it with you, and therefore the relationship is stronger. And this is, I think, one of the more insane defenses against peak experiences is, I don't know you, I don't want to have a peak experience with someone I don't know very well, right? Well, that does kind of limit it, doesn't it? Because of the 7 billion people on the planet today, you know less than 1% of 1% of 1%, right? You know almost nothing, right? And so the number of people you can have peak experiences with, right? Certainly in the hundreds of millions or perhaps billions, you can have a peak experience with anyone who wants to follow the recipe to create a peak experience. And the analogy is pancakes, right? I don't want to make pancakes with somebody I don't know very well, right? It makes no difference. If you combine 2 eggs, a little bit of baking powder, the flour of your choice, milk or beer or whatever it is you'd like to make, cinnamon, a little salt, right? Put some oil, heat the pan, get the mixture the right way, and you put it in the pan. You wait till the little holes appear, and then you flip it over and check it a little bit. Put on a plate with butter and maple syrup. You can have pancakes, and the pancakes can be delicious. The pancakes can be delicious with an enemy, with a stranger, with somebody who doesn't speak English, right? Pancakes can be delicious with somebody old, somebody young, someone of your same gender and opposite gender. The pancakes are good if you know how to make pancakes. And if you want to have more pancakes, if you want some peak experiences in your life, then the primary criteria for creating a peak experience is somebody wants to create a peak experience and is willing to do so with you. It's about willingness. And one of the things that I think about when I think about who I would like to have a peak experience with is somebody who wants to have peak experiences. Like, you could know someone really well, your mother, who wants to be miserable, who doesn't want to have a peak experience. Well, the criteria shouldn't be how well you know them, right? And it's going to be very difficult to create a peak experience with someone who wants to be miserable, right? Or someone else their peak experience may be whining, right? Like, they just absolutely love whining and ranting, and that is the highlight of their day, right? But to co-create a peak experience means that it's good for both people, right? And if they're more interested in whining and ranting and you want to co-create a peak experience, right? Right? So basically, right, there are relatively few people who are open to the power, to the magic, to the responsibility that is part of power and that creates magic, to being aware, who have the talent of self-awareness and want to utilize that to prioritize creating a peak experience. And I like that kind of person. I don't care if they're 80, I don't care if they're 20, I don't care if they're male or female. I think that's a smart decision, right? So that's an intelligent person. That's an uncommon person. That's a person who thinks outside the box. That's a person willing to be powerful. That's a person with self-awareness. Now, those are the type of people I enjoy getting to know, right? So, who to create a peak experience? Anyone who's excited to create a peak experience. Who not to create a peak experience with? Someone who says you shouldn't have peak experiences, they're supposed to just happen naturally, who only wants to know the people they already know, right? I don't know you, so therefore I'm not going to get to know you. Well, that's a dead end, right? That want to have a peak experience, right? So how do you do it, right? How do you create a peak experience? And I can tell you, every single time you follow the recipe for pancakes, you get a pancake. And every single time you follow the recipe to create a peak experience, you either create a peak experience, or I'm going to allow, even though this has never happened, meaning every single time that I've set out to create a peak experience using this recipe, I've done so. But let's just say that, an earthquake happens or whatever, and, that's not a peak experience. So either you create a peak experience or you encounter an unknown variable and get practice. Now, playing tennis, riding a bicycle, public speaking, all skills get better with practice. And it's no different with a peak experience. So how many peak experiences should you create? As many as possible. As many as you're willing to do. Now, you can have peak experiences alone, and that's a terrific thing to do. I find the synergy of creating it with another person to be about twice as fun, right? So you can create peak experiences alone, I do, but it's about twice as fun to create it with someone else who's also excited to create a peak experience. So what's the recipe? So, when I've led groups, nobody knows each other. People meet me for the first time, they meet each other for the first time. So let's start at the point of being strangers. Would you like to create a peak experience? Is that of interest, right? So, when I've been dating, sometimes I've started my first invitation to someone, right? Are you someone who would enjoy creating a peak experience as a way to get to know one another, right? Now, that's a wonderful filter, right? Because are you someone that wants to be happy, that wants more well-being in your life? Are you someone who thinks outside the box, right? Are you someone who will step into the unknown? Are you someone who's willing to try something new? Right? Are you satisfied with the mediocrity of coffee dates, right? So this is a wonderful, filter. So immediately someone says, yes, I would love to do that. How do we do it? I'm interested in that person, right? Because that's a special person, right? More importantly, that's someone you can create a peak experience with, right? And if you can create one peak experience with someone, why not another one? And if you can create a peak experience every few days with someone, why wouldn't you spend a lot of time with them, right? And isn't that what everyone wants, to spend a lot of time with someone who they can create a peak experience with, who they regularly experience an uplift in well-being, right? That's I think, one of the most intelligent filters for any relationship. right? So I'm very interested in anyone that's, so we start as stranger, right? You begin with the idea, right? Would you be interested in creating a peak experience together, right? Now, if they say no, they're not for you, right? But if they say yes, then what's the next step? Well, you want to create a container of time. Now, I suggest the minimum of an hour. Now, the first few minutes of that time has to be taken introducing someone to the idea, right? Because most people, right, in the unconscious cult default to I just live life, and then, every now and again something amazing will happen, and I'll just be satisfied with that, right? So create a peak experience. It's a new idea for most people. And then how do you do it? That's even more new for most people. So the introduction is a brainstorming session, right? So we've got this hour of time. Now, what I'd like to suggest is that you throw out pictures. You throw out pictures of things that excite you, things that you would really enjoy doing with someone. It doesn't have to be me, and there's no commitment to that we're going to do this, right? We're going to see what happens, right? And so you want to think of things that you'd really like to do with someone. Male, female, doesn't matter too much, but you'd really like to have this peak experience with someone. And it's good that particularly when you're meeting a stranger, like if you're doing a peak experience, which you can do this with your intimate partner, it might involve sexuality or various things like that. But it's good to start with something that it would be a peak experience to do it with just anyone, right? You think of something like paragliding or scuba diving or eating food of this kind, or having this kind of a conversation. It doesn't matter who it's with. If it was this kind of conversation, it would just be wonderful, right? So you want to think of peak experiences where it's about the experience and not too much about this particular person or not that particular person. In the ideal, if you're good at this, if you're really good at this, you can come up with something that's so interesting and fun that you'd have an amazing time doing it with the most boring person in the world that you didn't even like, right? As long as, they were into the recipe. So we're going to take turns going back and forth. And I'm going to suggest something. Usually I'll go first to give an example because it's a new thing, and sharing something vulnerable with a stranger is difficult enough than if you've never heard it done before. So I'll usually offer to go first, just because I'm comfortable with the format. So I might say something like, one peak experience that I can imagine is we meet at 10 at night or I might take them out of it. Like I meet someone at 10 at night. It's a moonlit night, right? It's a full moon. And we've got glowing outfits. There's these interesting, costume outfits with a battery, so they kind of have hemmed glows. And we play this music. We go on a jogging thing. We do it in complete silence, right? We do it in complete silence. So we meet. It's a full moon. We meet at this location at 10:30 at night. We've got our lighted costumes that kind of light the path a little bit. And they've brought 5 delicious vegetarian, preferably organic, but if it's not available organic, fine. They've bought 5 delicious vegetarian things that are a bit unusual, but they really like that food, and they've either made it or they've got it from their best caterer or whatever. And I've got 5 things, and we've each got 2 drinks, right? That are also, from our favorite drinks. Could be hot, could be cold, whatever. So we have our picnic, knapsacks on with that, and we go on a bit of a jog from this location up to this location. And in complete silence, they feed me a taste. We've already discussed any allergies and stuff like that. But they feed me one of their food dishes, and I taste it. And then I feed one of my food dishes. We give a thumbs up if we want more of it, or a thumbs down if not, or a this if so. We take turns. We go through our 5 dishes, and then we do a laughing exercise where we just practice laughing for no particular reason, and then we have a check-in and see how the experience is going so far. And that's our first talking. And we focus on 3 appreciations we each share 3 things we absolutely loved about the event. So that would be a 9 out of 10 as I'm imagining it. And so that would be an example of something. And that I've never said anything like that. That was just an imagination. And that's the beauty. It's like these are populating possibilities. These things never have to happen. They don't have to happen with this person, but you create new possibilities for a peak experience. So that would be something that I might say as the first turn, right? And then their job is to say anything they liked about it. Like, yes, I like hikes on moonlit walks. I wouldn't be comfortable with meeting you for the first time at 10 at night, given that we don't know each other. But, after a few interactions together, if I was comfortable, I'd like to do that with somebody that I felt comfortable with. I like the moonlit night. I love selecting food. Some of my favorite food is meat, so I'm not into the vegetarian thing, but I could see that doing it with there is good vegetarian food I like, right? So that could be good. So they share what they like and what they don't like about my idea. That's the turn. Now they take a turn, right? So then, they take a turn and they share an example, and it has to be like an 8.5 to 10. So they have to think a little bit, perhaps. And they might do something if they're just learning, they might do something much smaller, because you don't have to do a big script. You just have to have at least one experience that would be a peak experience, one part of it. So they'd share something, and then I will share what I liked and didn't like about that. Then it's my turn. Now, that is it. That is it. That is as simple as it gets. If I find anyone, anywhere in the world, right, who is excited to have a conversation about a peak experience, number 1. Number 2, we'll take turns going back and forth for an hour. Now, in an hour, you usually each share like 3 versions. Like you saw, that only took like 5 minutes. But someone new may need a little bit more time because they've never explored that idea, right? But in an hour, you at least take 3 turns, and maybe you take 5. Maybe you take 10 turns, right? You go back and forth. Now, after you've gone back and forth at least 3 times, but maybe around 5, you start to think like, oh, you like that, I like this, you like this, you like this, you like that. Now, when you've got a good set of ingredients, it's like we've got the food thing, we've got this bit, we've got that bit, we can say, towards the end of the hour, we can say, what do you think about, would it be a peak experience for you if we did this, 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 and this? And you combine, you bring bits and pieces of all the brainstorming together, that focusing on the areas you're both excited, right? And you have to include what, when, where, right? We would meet at this place at this time, and this is what we would do, right? And so every recipe should include the timing that works for you, right? So if I share that 10 p.m. on a Thursday would be good, and you share that 9 a.m. on a Wednesday would be good, maybe both of those times don't work for the other person. But after a few turns, usually there's at least one time, right? Or maybe you have a perfect compatibility in what you want to do. The challenge is finding the time. That's why you want someone motivated to create a peak experience. It's the most important thing in life. But I have never gotten to the end of an hour where I haven't gotten a great recipe for a peak experience for both people, meaning that if we did this, I think it would be a 7, 8, 9, 10, and you think it would be a 7, 8, 9, 10, and you aim, and then if you're both like a 7, you could say, well, what could we do to bring it up to a 9? Right? Is that doable? What would we tweak to bring it up? You can brainstorm and tweak a little bit together. And you write it down, right? And you can say, this is our roles. Like, my role is to do this and this and this. Your role is to do that. Now, at the end of the conversation, a couple of things have happened. Number one, you have been seen, and you have seen. Number one. Number two, you've spent time conversing. Number three, you've felt the energy back and forth. Number four, you've created something together. You've created new possibility fields, right? And you've seen and been seen, right? So you have a sense of the flow with each other. Now, at the end of that, when you have a picture that would work for both of it, then comes the question, would you like to co-create something along those lines with me, right? At this time that works for both of us, at this place that works for both of us, in this. Now, the answer in my experience has always been yes. Why wouldn't you want to have a peak experience with someone capable of doing that? Right? I don't know why not. And so then you plan the event, right? You write it down, you review the script. You might need an additional call, or you might just take a little bit more time. Say, okay, I will do this, I'll do that. Any boundaries around here, any clarifying things you want to say about this? Is there anything that would make this better for you? Is there anything that you want to avoid? Like, don't wear makeup. I hate synthetic perfumes, right? Or makeup's fine, but synthetic perfumes, don't wear that, right? Try and wear something soft. I like soft fabrics, right? Is that all right? Tweak it. You're directors. You're directing a peak experience based on what you know about yourself and based on your imagination. You saw me light up a little bit, when I was talking about that. It's so easy. It's so easy, right? If we lived in an intelligent culture, every person would have at least one peak experience a week with someone they know, and another one with someone they're meeting for the first time, because it's so much fun, right? Now, right? So, as I said, you can do things like jump in a plane and go to Vegas and see a Cirque du Soleil show and do this kind of stuff if you both put up $1,000. Right? But you can also have a peak experience with a picnic. You can have a peak experience with silence. You can go for a walk humming. These things are free, right? You just need to either, when you're collaborating, say, I'd like to collaborate and keep the budget. Like, I don't want to spend more than $100 on this peak experience. So if I'm happy to go along if you want to spend more than that, but I'm not willing to spend more than $100 at this juncture. But I will invest time and energy and do this and this and this, right? So, as I said, there's plenty of them that can be free. They just take a little bit more skill. It's easy to, jump out of a plane for the first time and skydive and have it be a peak experience just because it's, completely new, but those tend to have a little bit of a cost associated. So you go then through the peak experience, which, as I say, is incredibly successful. And then you can check in, at a few points. If it's a long peak experience, you can do a 10-hour peak experience, a 2-day, a 3-day peak experience. You can do it for an hour. You can check in, and if it's just a short one, an hour or so, you check in at the end, like 1 to 10, how was that? What would you do differently? Right? Because that's the first take, right? It's your first take of that script with that person. So you might think, oh, I forgot the pillow, right? I wanted a picnic, but, my butt's prickly. It's a wonderful location. We just needed a pillow, right, to sit on. That would lift it up 2 points. So you collaborate as co-directors of peak experiences to refine your script, either for somebody else, or you can try it again, right? You can say, let's do it again, but this time do this, this, and this. Somebody who's willing to co-direct peak experiences with is an incredibly valuable, intelligent human being. And just takes an hour, just takes a little bit of awareness, right? Good luck, and tell me about the peak experiences that you create with this exercise.